So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us, not just for the first session of the day, but for the first one of the festival. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this D&AD Festival's Jury Insight session on designing digital spaces. I hope you're all sufficiently caffeinated and raring to go, because we'll be diving into some fascinating insights from the design and creative transformation categories very shortly. My name is Megan Carnegie, and I'll be moderating the panel today. I'm a freelance features journalist writing for publications like BBC and Wired about economics, labour and tech. As this is the opening session of the festival, I wanted to give you a quick overview of what's going to happen today. Each of the panellists is going to show us some of the work that they really appreciated during the judging. And then I'll be asking them questions individually and as a group. And then I'll be posing questions to the audience as well. So be thinking about what you want to ask the jurors today. So we've got 5 esteemed jurors on the panel. So thank you, Shun, Wayne, Des, Kagonya, and Reginé for joining us today. They've been judging across both the digital design and creative transformation panels. And so they're going to show us some of their work, standout pieces of work, and explain what impressed them about it. We'll then move on to discussing more general themes around designing digital spaces and have questions at the end for the audience. So, Shun will kick us off. Shun Ishikawa is a creative transformation juror and partner of KESIKI Inc., an impact and transformation design firm that focuses on fostering kind economy. Prior to co-founding KESIKI, he was head of Design and Strategic Design Director at BCG Digital Ventures and a founding member of IDEO Tokyo, where he led and built teams as Design Director and PDD Innovations as Creative Lead, as well as serving as a professor and program director of the Creative Leadership Program at Tama Art University. Shun advises senior executives of startups and large companies. So Shun, if you want to show your work and then let us know what impressed you about it.
Cool. Hello, nice to meet you everyone, and thank you for introducing me to everyone, Megan. Let's have a look at this.
경찰에 신고할 수 있는 방법이 개발됐습니다.
All right, so as you're saying, I mean, this itself as an idea, maybe it's not a brand new idea. It's been happening everywhere to sort of applying a design approach to solving these issues. But what I liked about this is like there are 3 things maybe. The one is obviously the design. It started with as a campaign actually. It wasn't officially the formal sort of the policy making project, but somehow I don't know how that happened, but the campaign it started, but the issue was so big, and then they connected really well with the government and then the police offices, and it became an official formal process which implemented in the government and then for citizens. So how sort of we can sort of use the power of design and then almost a prototype. The campaign was almost a prototype which became a real thing and a long-lasting service which helps really the people who needs care. So that's the sort of I think I talked about the first thing, the second thing, applying a design, and also this became the formal thing. And then maybe the last thing I would say is like this tap. I mean, there are many other ways to solve and then communicate to the polices, but I think these people with really the awkward situation, and then what are the ways to make this product or service really accessible and easily approachable. Making a call is really tough to talk about your situation, so making it really subtle and then in simple action of tapping tap inspired by the moles thing. I think that's the sort of the beauty of this output, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shun. So Wayne, we've got Wayne Dakin next, who's a digital design juror and global principal creative at Wolff Olins. Wayne has over 25 years experience in the industry and has held creative leadership positions in APAC, EMEA and the US. Previous to coming to London, he was a creative director at Jung von Matt, then helped to build Jam before moving to joint ECD across the Engine Group. More recently, he was ECD of AKQA and helped the agency win a number of industry titles and awards. Recognised internationally with over 500 awards, he creates work that's at the intersection between creativity, tech and humanity. So, Wayne, let's have a look at your film.
To design a space that clearly and consistently surfaces alerts and background activity in a rich and delightful way. The result being an entirely new and intuitive way to interact with the iPhone, one that truly blurs the line between hardware and software. We're calling it the Dynamic Island. We've designed this new space to be highly adaptive, so it can fluidly expand into different shapes using uniquely crafted animations and transitions. So now, when you receive an alert, the Dynamic Island expands to notify you. Our ambition is to clearly convey the information and present content and controls without distracting from the app you're in. This works across the entire system for things like confirming your AirPods are connected, muting, or starting a charge. Each alert has its own personality, and it's been designed with its own unique character, making it easy to identify at a glance, like when you're using Face ID, tapping your iPhone in transit locations. The Dynamic Island also displays ongoing background activity, like when you're playing music. When you swipe to go home, the music app gracefully morphs into the Dynamic Island, always staying active and visible. And we've even designed it to show the current album art. It's also completely interactive. You can tap and hold to expose more options, or tap to go back to the app. So now when you're on a call, you have easy access to controls without leaving the app you're using. We've designed all these animations to feel fluid, lively, and highly responsive. The Dynamic Island is always live and active, heightening the sense of vitality by adapting in real time to show you important information, like your next direction from maps. And it's always visible for ongoing activities, like when you're using the timer. We've designed live activities, a new feature on the iOS 16 lock screen, to work seamlessly with the Dynamic Island, including support for third-party apps. So you can keep track of what's happening from anywhere on iPhone, like following a baseball game without needing to leave the app you're in, or not missing the Lyft ride while texting friends. We've also created a robust design system for developers, so every alert looks and feels consistent, no matter which app it comes from. And when you have more than one background activity, the Dynamic Island playfully adapts, bubbling out into two elements. At Apple, we're focused on creating extraordinary products. Products born from designing hardware and software together, so you don't know where one ends and the other begins. The Dynamic Island does this in a truly magical way and enables an entirely new iPhone experience.
Yeah, hi. I guess this caused a lot of interesting debate in our jury. We're in digital design. I think for us it was interesting because, like, if you look at where the world is going, and this is obviously like last year compared to now, but this blended world of where sort of like where does software, hardware, where does design and UX meet is really interesting. So for us, we thought this was, and for me, I thought it was really interesting because it's sort of a celebration of micro detail, micro interactions. And I think like it's easy to get a lot of like hero moments in an advertising campaign or a big billboard or some cool shit like that on film, right? But actually, the little guy, you know, if I do this or I do that, they're two different meanings, but they're just one finger that's changed. And I think the interaction element of how fluid, how seamless, how beautifully simple that is. It's like a living Terminator in a way. It's a bad analogy with AI coming, but sorry, Microsoft people. But you know, and regardless of whoever it is, the future of UX and the future of design in this blended world where things become more seamless, more human, more micro interactions. I think the little attention to detail was beautiful from a craft joy. You know, when I look at this, I get excited. It brings me joy, even though it's a little thing that moves up and down and is fluid. You know, whether you like the name or not, I don't know, but the sense of actually having something that's adaptive, that changes, and it's fluid. And actually the fact that I think with Apple, you know, getting rid of some of the hardware features, like the notch, and the place and playing around with that as well for this design to become more fluid, was a real celebration of like micro interactions and the little guy, or little human, I guess is probably better.
I love the idea of micro interactions, and maybe we can dig into that a bit later. But next we have Tepaki, who is one of our creative transformation jurors and digital experience director for Honest and Principle. With over 20 years experience in the tech, customer experience and innovation areas across a variety of sectors from automotive to telecom to financial services and FMCG. Prior to joining the Principle Group, Des worked at Fitch as a digital director and was responsible for running the digital proposition, leading key brand accounts and deploying a range of multi-territory projects for the likes of Nestle, Mercedes, Dell and T-Mobile. So Des, we're looking forward to your film.
Now on the court, Shun Ishikawa.
You cannot be serious! Get away from me!
Welcome to Michelob Ultra, McEnroe versus McEnroe, one of the most exciting moments in the history of tennis.
On one side, John McEnroe playing on a real tennis court.
On the other side, virtual John McEnroe.
You ready to face yourself? Whoa, okay.
Bring it on, man. Let's do this. How the hell did they do this?
After analysing every single match in John's career, each avatar was programmed with adaptive artificial intelligence that think and play just like John.
An Unreal Engine will control where the robots are positioned, how fast the tennis ball is going to go, and what kind of spin the ball is going to do as well.
To accurately replicate McEnroe's style of play of his career.
This is a fog spoon. It's actually the smallest molecule of water you can see with your eyes. The cool thing about it is you can project on it.
Which John can slay a ball to and the ball will pass through there.
You cannot be serious!
Yeah, I suppose what I really liked about this is just the blend of everything. So you have a creative transformation of a whole space. You use AI to figure out the movements. You use robots to kind of serve back. You have to build a court that is specifically for this film that you're doing. And then on the other hand, you need to project somewhere. Now, in order to project is not an easy thing. So to actually come up with a mist that you can project on, and then so McEnroe can see where the other McEnroe is quite an innovative kind of approach. So for me, kind of brought to life what the future looks like in terms of where we're going with spaces and how digital can transform these in the future with the help of different elements. So it's not just a pure digital element, but an element of design, digital, physical, and entertainment. So that's why I liked it.
So next we have Dr. Kagonya Awori, who's a digital design juror and human-computer interaction professional based in Nairobi, Kenya. She has led user experience and design teams and projects in various companies around the world, including Microsoft, iHub Kenya, and Safaricom. Motivated by her passion for African research and design, in 2012, Kagonya co-founded the iHub UX Lab, which was the first design lab in East Africa dedicated to UX. So, we're looking forward to seeing your film, Kagonya. Thanks.
Africa's gaming market is on the brink of a boom.
Gamers have more than doubled in recent years.
But as the game industry booms, Africa accounts for less than 5% of its global revenues.
La représentativité, elle est très faible. L'Afrique aujourd'hui, c'est un statut de PNG dans le jeu vidéo.
This desire to make games that are at first made for Africans came from the lack of representation of Africa in video games.
The fabrics and the materials, the textures and accessories are very important in African culture. We wanted something that is cool and modern, that the younger generation can be proud of and look up to.
En Afrique, ici, on a beaucoup d'histoires fortes, on a beaucoup de héros forts. Beaucoup de jeunes designers ont compris que c'était important de ramener la culture africaine.
Je me suis inspirée vraiment de mon pays, de ses ethnies, de leur façon de vivre, de leur culture.
Really cool, seeing these outfits on characters who are actually from, this region, because we have so many beautiful stories to tell.
So good morning, everyone. First, thank you all for being here so early. I'm not a morning person, so I really commend you for that. Yeah, so my name is Kagonya, and why I love this work, about 2-3 reasons for it. Number one, it went beyond checkbox inclusion. So while I admire a lot of the work where they're trying to globalize products in the digital spaces, a lot of the times when it comes to trying to include everyone, it's more or less just changing the color of the skin. But as you can see with these avatars, they went way beyond that. So this project actually traveled throughout the continent to understand the different fashions. I'm from East Africa. So there's East Africa, Southern Africa, North Africa, West Africa, and Central Africa. We're vastly different as regions, and then within these regions, we're vastly different as countries. So they were trying to represent these different parts so that any gamer across the continent can feel that they can identify with the characters. So it wasn't checkbox inclusion, it was a lot of work that got into it to travel through these different regions and work with local designers and then get even the fabric right. So in these different regions, the fabric is different, the fashion is different, The jewelry is different, as you can see on my fingers. It's quite different, so I love that. I think the second thing is that they also try to democratize this. So now they made it an open project. So it's an open library. Anyone can come on board, pick up the work they've done and include it in a lot of the games that they have. So I think that's also quite impressive. And then when we look at design, in the African continent, as you have seen, gaming is becoming a huge thing. So the third thing I like about it is that it's recognized how gaming is done. So more often than not, when it comes to gaming, it's usually games are developed for one-person use and where the interactions are usually in the digital spaces, right? So you communicate with your gamers via the digital space. For a lot of the gaming communities on the continent, gaming is a social function. So you have to think about that we have lots of gaming hubs, right? So it's like you go to a gaming arcade, more or less, kind of like in the mall, or in the rural areas, it will be like a kiosk. So you have to think about not only the player or the online audience, but the audience that is there physically with you. So when you see the physical audience, the watchers, when they're looking at their representation online, when they're looking at this one gamer, personalizing the skins, it also gives them a sense of recognition and visibility. And this is something that's very real for us. Often we're often invisible in online spaces. So this project really is way beyond, think about design, think about good design, and think about putting some good work and time into it. I like quality work. And so they did not do a checkbox inclusion. They actually went down, worked with the locals, and took their time to ensure that each of these regions feels very well represented. And I think that's something that we can take away as designers and creatives.
Amazing. Thanks, Kagonya. It's great to see a campaign that's so multifaceted. Yeah. So finally, we have Reginé Gilbert, who is a digital design juror and a James Weldon Johnson professor at the NYU Tandon School of Engineering. She's a user experience designer, educator, and author with over 10 years' experience working in technology. Reginé's areas of research focus are digital accessibility, inclusive design, and immersive experiences. Her first book, Inclusive Design for a Digital World, Designing with Accessibility in Mind, was released in 2019, and she's working on a new book titled Human Spatial Computing, which Oxford University Press will publish later this year, so we're very excited about that. So yes, Reginé, can't wait to see your film.
Serena in their life. I'm just so grateful because yeah, you got me here.
On August 9th, 2022, Serena Williams announced her retirement. 2 days later, Nike released a year-long study, a showcase of what it takes to stay on top for over 2 decades, from fear, insecurity, nervousness, to power, experience, mental toughness. This is Never Done Evolving, featuring Serena Williams, an AI study in the form of avatars that reveals the evolution needed to become the GOAT. We analyzed all data and footage from official tournaments throughout Serena's career. Machine learning was able to model for each era's playing style, decision-making, shot selection, reactivity, recovery, and agility, creating the most accurate virtualization ever done with an athlete. To make it accessible and inspiring to everyone in the world, we turned the study into a live virtual match. Starring 17-year-old Serena, the age she won her first Grand Slam, against 35-year-old Serena, the age she won her 23rd Grand Slam. The game was the result of more than 130,000 games generated using vid-to-player technique developed by Stanford University. At every point won, Josh Appel showcased the study's main insights.
Well, you can just see the power on these serves from 2017 Serena Williams.
We're all extremely passionate about sport. When we look at the data we capture, there's beauty in that. The lines and curves, it's like a symphony.
Serena's avatar data is being used to improve techniques for young athletes and product technology. The game broke all Nike's organic views records on YouTube, spreading across mass media courts.
I mean, this level of excellence it kept over so many decades is just absolutely astounding. And she's had a daughter in the process and so forth.
I feel it's more of like an evolution of Serena.
I love it. You can hear me? Great. Good morning, everybody. So that was one of my
scripts that I really liked. There were many, though. We had many entries. The reason I chose this one to talk about today is because it involves machine learning, data, and design. So it's combining all these things. I think about when I first started in design, we just designed, right? We didn't think about data. We weren't incorporating data. And as I evolved as a designer, I started working with the data analytics team. How many people work with data analytics teams in here? Anybody? A few of you? So yeah, somebody back there. So a lot of times nowadays we need that data in order to design. I think that it's not possible anymore for us to just design what we want without knowing who we're designing for. This particular project interested me so much because of the number of times that the machine learning played this game. It was over 100,000 times that it played. And did anybody watch? Who do you think won, 1999 Serena or 2017 Serena? Raise your hand if you think it was 2017 Serena. 1999 Serena. Okay, so a lot of you were right. So it was really cool to see who got to win. And the things that I liked were the fact that it was a pretty accessible experience, right? The game was played over and over. They talked about the game, they described what was going on in the game, and it was really cool. It was a cool experience overall to use those three elements of machine learning, data, and design. I think that that's something that designers need to look more into as we move forward. How can you utilize the data to design, and how can you make those things cool and new and accessible in the process?
Thanks so much, Reginae. Cool, new, and accessible, I think, is three great takeaways. So I think it'd be really nice to dig into, some of your experiences in the judging process. And so I think, we're always curious about what happens behind closed doors. So I wondered if I could ask Reginé, Kagonya, and Wayne, were there any things when you were judging that, felt like a heated discussion or maybe took you a while to resolve?
Yeah, there was lots of heated discussions. These guys were good sparring partners. You go first.
I will say this. Our group, we're all from different countries. First of all, we're all from different cultural backgrounds. We all have different backgrounds. I see Mark over there. Hey, Mark was in our jury too. So I would say we were very passionate about certain projects, and so we voiced our passion.
And I think what I also liked is that because we have different roles, we see things differently. Of course, the commonality is that we're all in design in one way or the other, right? But we see things differently, and our interests maybe are quite different. But you see, that conversation actually had me to do a lot of reflection around what is the future of design. So I'm interested very much in interfaces like voice interfaces beyond the screen. And if it has to be a screen, it will be a mobile screen. But in our room, we had people who had very, very varied interests. So of course there was a bit of banter. I think I really chided Wayne quite a bit because of his love for Dynamic Island. And he went on, but I think in the end he convinced me about it. But and also the Apple Android war, so that's another one. But I think the conversations were real and great because I got to learn a lot from the different jurors, and then to see things also differently, which is I think the beauty of design. You have to learn from someone else, and creatives. Inspiration comes from everywhere, and it can be from a conversation you have with someone else. So that's what I really enjoyed.
I totally agree. I think what was really interesting is like pre-pandemic, I think digital was going in a sort of more linear path. Post-pandemic, COVID, and also with all the shit going on in the world, geopolitics in many places. What's happening in Ukraine, what's happening with China, what's happening with Taiwan, what's happening with what happened during the pandemic with violence against women and child abuse, and all really heavy topics, right? As well as AI, as well as where the future of computing, where the future of design is going. It sort of was like a moment of time where this linear path then exploded outwards, and we had such stretch and such broad categories that attract everything across, moments of culture, moments of inclusivity for people, and how culture and technology and design can empower the niche communities or the people that are sort of unreflected or not heard about. And then at the same time, celebrations and moments of joy in design, which I was passionate about as a crafts-based person. So it was a really nice sort of microcosm of sort of what is happening. And for our category, it was so broad. What is digital design nowadays? I think that was a really interesting debate in its own right. And it fits with, where we're going in the future as being more innovative designers, I think.
Absolutely. So over in creative transformation, Des and Shun, what sorts of topics were you maybe come to, you were at loggerheads over, or specific topics you needed to, get out the way before you even began judging? We mentioned a few of those before this morning.
I think there are a few really interesting debates happening in creative transformation, because if you think about putting the two really vague open words like creative and transformation, it feels like you could put anything in there, right? So we have to really start discussing from what this creative transformation really stand for. So what we did initially was really getting rid of the sort of removing out of the creative transformation. We removed the branding and then sort of a campaign type of thing out of our almost category. And it happened really naturally, even though the team members came from 6 different countries but we had something in common by doing, judging online by themselves. We just came with I think the same question, what's this category is about? We need to really help redefine it. So that's how sort of it went. I wonder how you felt.
Yeah, I agree. It was quite interesting because obviously a bit of insights in terms of what happens. First we get, the list of all the entries. So you have to go through them on your own at home. You have to look at them, read them, understand them, and then decide if you want to get them to go ahead or not. So if a majority of the juries says yes, then they go into kind of like the judging room, which is when we all come together. And then we decide later on if it's a short list or or a pencil. So it was interesting when I first opened my laptop and I saw the entries, because we had a lot of what Shun said. I wasn't sure if most of the entries should have been in there. But I was very pleasantly surprised to be in the room and see that everyone was agreeing. But it's quite heated debate sometimes, because some people feel very passionate about one case study and others don't really agree. So you kind of have to be open to accept that different people have different opinions, and a case study might do well in D&AD, it might not do well somewhere else, because juries are people and we have different criteria when it comes to what each category means.
Awesome. So I think it would be really nice if we had some time for questions from the audience, but I had one quick question before, which is I know lots of people here will be wanting to know, how they can, win awards here, but I wondered what, techniques and ideas stood out to you that creatives should consider employing in their own work, from any of the work that you picked, but, generally today.
I'm going to say making your work inclusive, meaning that you're not just thinking about yourself or who's on your team, thinking about people who have low economic status, thinking about people with different abilities, thinking about people who speak different languages. These are all important things that I think a lot of designers don't actually think about from the beginning. So if you start to think about that from the beginning, I think you make better designs overall.
And on top of all that, I think there's a beauty in looking over an entry that blows your mind away. I think in our room, what we're asking ourselves is, we want to see something that will make us wish we were in that team or part of that group that was creating that. And I think to get there, of course, there's passion, but there's also an element of ensuring that you are what is your source of creativity? It's good to get out of the norm. You know, I know sticking to the norm is quite comfortable, but sometimes you have to get inspirations that are completely different from what you see every day. So, and that really comes out in the work. It really comes out in what ends up being presented to us. So I would say in the work that you do, the norm is great, but just get inspired by things that are totally different. You can be inspired from nature, you can be inspired from the shows you watch, but just, it will transcend in the work because we'll begin to see something new, something fresh, something inspiring, and that I think would make a huge difference. Yeah.
I'm going to just be very practical here and just say, read what the actual category is and perhaps make the video a bit, or the entry a bit more relevant to the category. I mean, you know, I know it takes time, I know it takes money to actually create these things, but give it the love that you gave to the actual work, because all work is amazing anyways, but you know, don't just do the same entry over and over, because it just kind of shows.
Yeah, absolutely. I wondered, do we have time to do some audience questions? Is that a possibility for today? Yeah? Okay, great. I think we have a roving mic, so audience, if you've got any questions for our jurors and panelists today. That's okay if not, I have many more. Okay, well, I will keep asking questions. We've got 10 more minutes, so awesome. Okay, so I think it'd be great if we took an opportunity to look a little bit to the future. I feel like there's so much there's so much movement and excitement, but also, some big topics that we're tackling here with designing digital spaces. So how do you think the disciplines around designing for digital spaces will evolve with all the pressures, Wayne, that you mentioned, but also evolve, as technology will evolve?
Yeah, super good question. I guess, look at everybody here, right? We're all very different, but we are all humans. And I think inclusivity is like the starting point. So making things inclusive for everybody, whatever they are, is like just a natural starting point. And I think like architecture, like design needs to actually take that really into account. I also think what is the future is really an interesting debate, because we are now there's stuff in there that was, do machines dream? There was a sort of AI data question around giving machines the permission to dream and do their own thing and visualize that, which was really interesting. So we were grappling with many different issues, but I think in the future, I think the blended future of whether it's physical, digital, virtual, or whatever, is going to get even sort of more blended and weird, which is good. I think it's we're at a as a designer, I think you're in an amazing opportunity to actually set new courses and do really cool shit and actually break rules. And this idea of blendedness is really interesting. But as long as it's blendedness with a human sort of touch built in, and humanity and empathy, I think that's really important.
I agree with that. I think you might have a little bit of an older bio for me, but I'm currently the co-founder for a Web3 MarTech company. So for us, it's interesting to see how the metaverse will come in, in terms of design, those kind of virtual spaces, and how the consumer of the future will interact, because that is not targeted to me, or probably not the panel here, but it's mostly about Gen Z and how they will actually interact within this virtual space, and what does that mean for brands, and how do we actually get through to do the campaigns in that way.
I just want to talk about, we have one entry for Tuvalu, where some folks may not know, this is an island, and it's an island that's disappearing because the water is rising. And because of that, if you don't have land, you can't be considered a nation. And so they decided they're going to collect all the data from the island, take all the data from government, all the images, they're taking photos of everything around the island, and they're building something virtual so that there'll be a virtual world when the land is covered by water. I thought this is such a brilliant idea to make a virtual world so they could still maintain their status as a nation, and they're fighting for this because we're a mess with our environment, right? So the water's rising, and so one of the things about preserving a nation digitally was pretty brilliant, I thought.
Yeah, and I think, so allow me to my academic hat on. So I think philosophically speaking, as we look into the future, as more of us as humans dwell in digital spaces, the role of the designer will even become more critical. So what we build and what we exclude in these spaces will define how humans interact in these spaces. So I think as we go forward, as designers and creatives, we need to realize that it's, work can be fun and passionate, but your role will become even more critical because more and more people will be spending more time either in hybrid spaces or purely digital spaces. So I'm talking about, gaming, the metaverse, but even beyond that, right? So like for Tuvalu, where they will have to have their whole country be in the metaverse completely. I would imagine as a role in that project would be quite critical for someone. Yeah. So when we look into the future, it's really thinking about our role as designers and seeing that becomes more and more critical. And the second thing is that the interfaces are changing even more. So a lot of the work in AI right now is looking at how we can use large language models to improve interactions between man and machine. And now you see we're looking at interfaces like voice interactions, interactions where the device is kind of put in the background. So how are we designing the spaces? We have to really think about that. We have to explore and expand the bevy of tools we're using so that now we allow people to be human, not only in this lived world, this physical world where we're face to face, but in the digital spaces that we are. So I think it's the role of design is not, it's not an aside anymore. It's very central into defining how people interact with each other. So I think that's something huge for the future.
I want to build on that a little bit maybe because I come from a very different background to maybe you guys. I'm the least techie, maybe a skeptic guy, I guess. I think and then we have anthropologists in our house, right? And then looking back on the history and how we became happier over the last, whatever the years, using technologies is interesting, you can question, right? The things we do is pretty simple, like we eat and we live and we make time with friends, and are we really getting everything better? Like our lives is really, I want to ask everyone actually, I want to learn more. I don't really have an answer because I work as also a chief design officer for the city government, and then thinking about the future of this whole, people living in that area. And then when I think about it, it's not only the technology is more like an enabler for good or enabler for better. And the designer has a really important critical role in a way to have a say or question what this means after we make this output. What are the outcomes or what are the consequences? And then it almost feels like it's a prototype to use technology because you can do so. So, but it's interesting to see what it means afterwards and stuff. I think that's maybe a role of designer could see through the bit of a future and looking back on what you've done as a prototype and then is it really good? What it means to us, and I think that's always a debate we have back in Japan. Yeah, actually.
I agree because it's not about the technology; it's about us, right? And the role of joy and the role of enjoyment. We have 300,000 years sitting around campfires, right? We love stories, and I think designers are modern day storytellers, and we need to not just function on form and getting there so seamlessly and frictionless. We've got to bring joy back into what we do.
What we do is an amazing end to this very insightful session. So thank you everyone for your time and amazing advice and creativity here. And thank you all for coming for the first session of the day. I hope you have a brilliant rest of the festival and catch many more talks on these two stages. So thank you everyone.
Thanks
so much.
Thanks.